argue with you.
We're not gonna argue with you. We're not gonna argue with you. Bet you $1,000 to a penny and say 40. All in. I got one through with money.
All that and more on this episode. Let's get into that action.
Okay, poker nuts, my apologies for the lackluster episode last week. It won't happen again, I promise. Back at Spades Poker House in Houston, buying in for $400. Let's get right into this action. First hand I play pocket fours in the small blind, and there is a raise to $15, one call, and I'm also definitely calling to set mine here as deep as we are, and the big blind calls as well. Four ways to a flop that comes some crap like queen 10-3, but no set for me, so I clearly just check and fold to a bet. Next, I pick up the absolute beautiful looking Jack 10 of spades, 3 folds, and in middle position, I open it up to $20, get 2 callers, the hijack and the small blind. 3 ways to a flop that is queen 10 deuce, seems familiar. Small blind checks, and I reach for continuation betting chips, but right before, I mean a millisecond before my chips touch the felt, the player behind me says $30. And now, I think for a moment and decide to check. But now, the player tries to check behind. No. The dealer calls the floor, and since he had taken action out of turn, the floor makes his action stand. The bet's now $30, the small blind folds, and now I'm curious. So I peel. The 3 of hearts on the turn, no good. I check, he bets 45, and I give him credit for the queen and fold. Now I have to play this garbage game where I pick up this trash hand, king, queen 7. Let's keep a counter of how many kings I see. Unlike last session when I lost a big pot with this kind of hand, I just call the straddle this time and fold to a flop bet. Now I see ace queen offsuit with 1 limp and make it $30. Only the small blind calls. I ask him why he had to call. Couldn't he just let me pick up the blinds? He says,
I have a pretty good hand, man.
the flop comes down king, queen, 3, 1 spade. He checks, and I c-bet for $30. He calls, probably holding some kind of king X hand after the call on the flop. The turn comes to 7 of spades, and now he leads into us for $30. I ask him if by a pretty good hand he means king, queen, and as I fold, he shows us king 9 of spades. Pretty close. Now on to this very interesting hand. I have a great table, very fun, talkative table. I go ahead and make the weak play of limping. There is a raise to $20 and 3 callers. I come along now getting 5-1 with Jack 7 of hearts. 5 ways to a flop is 10-8-5 with 1 heart, and it's a rainbow board. It checks to the button who bets $30. The big blind calls with 2 backdoor draws and a gut shot, and I think there's many cards I can bluff on. I call. 1 player behind calls. A player announces, I have outs. 4 ways to a turn, that comes 3 of clubs. And the action checks around. Now the button announces when he checks back, y'all got me scared. Which is the same player from the last hand with king 9 of spades, and he seems like a pretty honest player. And now the river and ace. Both turn and river cards don't really change much, and the big blind checks. I actually think this is a pretty good turn and river to take a shot at a bluff. If the big blind hit 2 pair or the ace, he would have let out on this river. Given the action and friendly nature of the game and statements of the players, I pony up and bet $100. 1 fold behind, good news. The button thinks for a second and decides on a fold, but sadly, the button exposes his hand face up as he folds, with the big blind still left to act. The button showed queen 10. This gives the big blind a mountain of information, and he thinks for a minute and decides on a call with 9-10. Clearly, the other player exposing his hand caused him to make the call. I'm slightly frustrated and whining about the entire situation, as you can see here with my hand pounding on the table several times, as I think my bluff would have gotten through. But once the big blind knows a player folds a better 10 than him, that leaves very few 10s left that beat him, and either I'm bluffing or 2 pair plus, so he makes the call. Not really much I can do about it. The young man on the button did apologize, and I understand these things happen, and we move on. So I decide to add on for $400. Next hand, I get dealt ace 4 of clubs, which should be a raise, but I'm steaming and don't want to build a pot, so I just call. 2 calls, and the big blind raises to $23. Same player who called us with 9-10 in the last hand. I quickly call, and so does the small blind. The flop comes down 10 of spades, 6 of hearts, 3 of clubs. Action checks around, and the turn is the 8 of clubs. Now with 2 checks and the nut flush draw, I'm clearly going to bet this hand for $30. The big blind calls, and the river is the 6 of diamonds. Now he checks again. I do feel like I have some showdown value here, and I don't feel like he's very strong, so I just go ahead and check it back. He says he missed and shows king 9 of spades, and I win with ace high. Back to the game, my daughter calls poo-poo. I straddle on the button and look down at king 7-7. Imagine that. There are several imps, and I decide on the button to pot it to $45. 2 callers, off to a flop 3 ways that comes ace 10-8. Action checks around to the river. There is a bet, and I just go ahead and let it go. If there are any Omaha coaches out there, holler at your boy. Finally, a premium. We look down at pocket queens while getting a massage. I'm surrounded by ladies. I raised pre-flop with 2 callers. The flop was atrocious. I think it came something like ace king king or ace ace king, and it was checked down to the river, and I end up hitting a queen for a full house and bet $50, and no one called. Back to this shit. Is the king's counter still up there? I just called a $20 raise and fold the flop when we do not improve, and there is a lot of betting. Now let's get into this routine hand that turns crazy. What a fun session this was. I get dealt 8-8 on the button, and there is a raise to $15 with 1 caller. I 3-bet. Why? Well, to hopefully isolate the hand. I also have position. I'm only getting 4-bet ever by hands that are far superior to mine, and it allows me to rep a much stronger range in the process. I clearly state
45.
And you can hear the dealer immediately state $40, as some confusion ensues when the dealer and another player think I say $40. Listen in.
You did say 45.
I said 45. It might have sounded like that, but whatever you want to do. I don't know why I would 3-bet, not 3x.
Yeah,
but you said
you know what I'm saying? But right.
I'm not gonna argue with you.
We're not gonna argue with you. We're not gonna argue with you.
If you play that audio back, it says 40.
I bet you $1,000 to a penny and say 40.
They were so sure, they said run the tape back. The dealer was willing to bet me mid-hand $1,000 to a penny that I was wrong. I'm a man of principles, so I'm going to run the tape back. And they going to learn today, and I'm going to get rich. Live at 5, local Houston dealer loses his life savings, his house, his cars, and funeral plot after a terrible proposition bet with a player.
We got the best dealer in the world. Incorrect bet sizing.
A $10 bet here would have netted me $1 million, but we settled on him adopting me as his nephew, and he is genuinely one of the best dealers at Spades Poker House, always in a good mood, always keeps the game fun, and has plenty of good anecdotes to add to the game. And if I forgot to mention, my 3-bet clearly got through and everyone folded to me. The next hand we are going to see with the best dealer in the world who owes me a lot of money. I get dealt 10-10, 9 deuce in Omaha. And I'm playing this to the filter. He gonna have to deal me something good. Few limps and then a raise to $25 that gets 4 calls, and I call. We are 6 ways to a flop of 5-5-3 with 2 clubs. There are 3 checks, and I'm gonna check my baby flush here and overpair. The original raiser though now bets $50 and gets 2 calls. Not much really to analyze, as I said I'm playing this to the filter. I do have, like I said, a baby flush draw and an overpair. That's probably not good, but I'm gonna call anyway. 4 ways to a turn that is the 7 of diamonds. 1 check, I check, and now the original raiser then bets $50 again. The player behind him goes all in for $88, and then there's 1 call of the $88. I make sure that the original raiser can't re-raise before I make my decision. I don't think that I'm probably good here too often, but I do think that the original better and raiser and the player directly across from me are probably splitting a 5. The original raiser completes after I call, and we are off to a river with 1 player all in. That is the miracle bink of the century, 10 of diamonds. The first to act now jams his entire stack of $394. We are salivating and sweating at the same time, thinking, God, please don't have pocket fives in there for quads. But we didn't get here just to get here to fold, so we make the call, and he shows fives full of tens, and we roll our tens full, winning this massive pot. And as you can clearly see, I roll all 4 of my cards, but the table seems to think I didn't.
No,
I
where's
did
the
show
other two?
4.
Yeah. No, he did. You
Yo,
put
yeah, I
it
put him
down.
in. I put him in. I put him in. I was finna say, yeah, you better for sure.
Yeah.
No,
Okay, that's what you were saying I didn't care about. I
That's
didn't.
the
That's why I was
only way I'm
confused.
paying him, because I seen 4.
Right.
Kind of confused you pulling that way.
No, I pulled him in.
Y'all really trying to get me out here, huh? That's what y'all want to
I
do?
won't let him.
Wow, tough crowd today. But seriously, this was a fun table and a great group of guys to play cards with. I will gladly play with any of them again. Enough of the shenanigans. Back to the action. Very next hand, I'm still stacking chips and look down at ace jack of spades. I open a $45 and get 3-bet to $100. 3-bets tend to be very strong, so this is a pretty easy and clear fold. Next, I look down at jack 9 of diamonds, a decent suited 1-gapper. There is a raise to $22, 2 callers, and I call. 4 ways to a flop that comes down, jack, 5, 7, rainbow. Action checks to me, and I decide to check back for some deception and to pot control with my top pair but less than stellar kicker. Action checks through, and the turn is the 10 of clubs. Now the small blind leads for 25. The big blind calls. My hand is under-repped here and too strong to fold for $25 with only 1 draw that we block getting there on the turn. Player behind calls. The river is the 3 of clubs. It checks to me, and here is something I struggle with that I am trying to get better at, and that's missing out on value. As played, I think I should be betting this river for value. A lot of 10x hands I think call me since I checked back flop, but I do not bet. It checks down, and I win with 1 pair of jacks. The small blind ended up having king 10. Now I look down at ace king in the big blind here. There are a couple limps and the button raises to $15. The small blind calls, and I want to put the pressure on here and go pretty large since I am out of position. Picking up 12x blinds with no variance is the goal, so I make it $70 and it works. No one calls, and we pick this one up. Here I go with this game again, and wouldn't you know, I get, you guessed it, kings. Limps to the button. I decide to raise the $20. Get a few callers, and then I fold to a $50 flop bet. Bomb pot time. I look down at ace ace queen 8 with 1 suit, flop the nut flush draw on the top board and a queen on the bottom with clearly an overpair of aces. I call a $15 bet on the flop. The turn and river action checks through, and there is no help on either board, and we don't win or chop. Back to a game I semi know how to play. I am in the big blind with 3-4 of hearts. There's 1 raise to $15 and 1 call, and I go ahead and defend. This is a fine hand to defend with multi-ways. The flop comes 10 deuce 6 rainbow with 1 heart. I check. The original raiser bets $30 and middle position calls, and I elect to go ahead and make the call here, but I have a plan to donk lead most turn cards that are draw heavy or good for my big blind range. Any heart, 7, 6, deuce, and a 5 obviously giving us the nuts. I think opponents will hold some 10x sometimes, but the original raiser definitely possibly holds 2 overs, and it was just continuation betting. When the turn comes, absolute gin, the 5 of spades giving us the nut straight, I decide to stick with the plan, and I go ahead and donk lead for $100 here. I could check raise, but I feel like if I'm going to donk lead as a bluff on many cards, I will also have to donk lead occasionally with my made hands. So I do that, and sadly no one calls, and I pick up this nice little pot. Here on the button, I look down at 2 black 9s, and after 1 limp, I go ahead and raise it to $20. The small blind and big blind both call, and the flop is not very good with queen 10, 5, and 3 diamonds, 2 overs. So action checks through to me, and I'm just trying to make it to showdown at this point, so I go ahead and check it back. The turn is a 10 of hearts. Action checks to me again, and I go ahead and check it back. The river is either a jack or queen, I can't remember, but there is a bet from one of the players, and I just go ahead and let this go. Next, I look down at ace deuce of spades and raise to $15. I end up getting 3-bet to $45 and just let it go. On to this interesting hand where I get dealt king 10 offsuit and decide to limp. 5 other players limp, and we are off to a flop that is king 7-4 with 2 spades. Flop top pair, pretty good board for us. There's 1 check, and I go ahead and lead out for $15. I end up getting 3 callers, and we are off to a turn that is the 6 of diamonds. That turn doesn't change anything unless someone called with 5-3 or 5-8 and hit the gutter. So I go ahead and lead out again for just under 3/4 pot of $60 bet. I want to bet here as most 2 pairs plus would have probably raised flop in a multi-way with a flush draw on the board. So I'm going to charge all spade draws or any weird 1 pair plus a straight draw hands on this turn. Now for the $60 I get 2 callers. Now I'm starting to think that king 10 might be outkicked. The river is a non-spade jack. No additional straights get there and the flush doesn't get there. But I slow down here and decide to check. Because of the size of the pot, I don't think I'm really getting called by too many hands that I beat if I make a $100 plus river bet here. Both players check behind and I end up taking it down with 1 pair of kings. After this hand, I go ahead and rack up. We are in this game for 800 and out for 1,591 for a pretty good profit. What a session that was. Crazy session. Had a great time playing with those guys. We ran it up. Maybe some questionable plays in Omaha, but I definitely had some good plays in there. I'm learning every week, trying to study, trying to get better with my game so that you guys can learn, take something away from this. Hopefully I gave you guys some value in this episode, and at least some entertainment value. But as always, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you're a subscriber, smash that like button for me. And if you want some more GH Poker action, check out this video. And how do I say it?
To the moon!